If you're struggling to figure out how to get the right kind of job, the right kind of person, one of my favorite lectures from Neville Goddard can help you out, and it's the Rearrange the Mind lecture. And it's where Neville Goddard shares the story about him in the military. And it puts into perspective how we are all interconnected as one mind. The moment that we have a desire within ourselves or something that we want to create, we have everybody else around us, no matter what position or relationship we are with them, they're all ultimately us pushed out. They're meant to give us whatever our mind is impressing. And if our impression happens to be we are in a state and we are stuck, everybody else around us must maintain that same mind. They have to interact with us in that way. And in Neville's Rearrange the Mind lecture, one of the things he talks about is the fact that during World War II, he got drafted. And once you get drafted and you're in the military, there's no set date for you to get out. You're just stuck there for the duration. So for Neville Goddard, he didn't ask immediately for any of his superiors. He didn't set anything out in the world of man. He decided to go into his imagination, in his subconscious mind, and go into the assumption that he was home. And when he did this, of course, the first time that he went to have the conversation with his superior about being discharged, they denied his request. And after this denial would happen, most people would just go and accept that at face value, and they'll be like, okay, this happened. I'm just going to accept the fate. I'm going to accept the assumption that this other person has placed on me, which is I'm drafted and I'm going to be in the military. But for Neville, what Neville Goddard did in that situation was he imagined himself at home in New York. He imagined himself in his apartment, in the bedroom with his daughter in the bed and his wife in the other bed. And through spending time in that assumption, even though he was in the barracks with 25 other men, he laid there assuming in his imagination that he was in New York. And anybody who was psychically sensitive, he mentioned in the lecture that they would have noticed that he wasn't there. He was in New York. He felt the feeling of him walking around the apartment, him touching his daughter, him looking around, looking outside and imagining, not imagining of New York, but being in the actual space of his apartment in New York. And through doing this and is sitting in this assumption, it didn't happen overnight. The manifestation happened well afterwards. It took him about, if I'm not mistaken, 2 weeks, where he was just laying down in that assumption, staying in that apartment again and again and again, until one night he had a dream, he had a vision where he saw a hand come down and change the paper that he had received and moved it to approved, and heard a voice say, "What I have done cannot be undone," or something along those lines. And after that point, he, laid in bed awake, decided that he was going to get up as soon as he possibly could, got himself ready, shaved and taken care of, and he got called into the office of his commanding officer. And his commanding officer again started asking him questions, asking him, "Hey, are you sure you want to leave the military?" And he said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." And the strange thing was, this was a different type of conversation, because usually as a private, when you're in the presence of a commanding officer, you never sit. When he asked him to come inside, he told him to close the door and to sit down, which already showed an indication that things were different right then and there. And in the process, he kept asking him questions, trying to convince him of the reasons why he should stay in the military. And then Neville just persisted in the same thing. "Yes, sir, I still want to leave the military. I still want to leave. I still want to leave. I still want to be discharged." And sure enough, he told him to get the paperwork from another one of his commanding officers, and that he would end up signing it off, and he was honorably discharged. All of the work that he did was the work inside of his mind. He rearranged his mind to the assumption of what he desired, which was being in a new apartment. Well, not the new apartment, but being in New York, which was being in New York. He desired to be in New York. He did not ask anybody else to go to New York. He didn't think about the money in his bank account. He didn't think about the circumstances. He didn't think about the fact that the military doesn't let you out. He didn't think about the time it would take. He just imagined himself in that moment at night in New York. He rearranged his mind. And through the act of rearranging his mind and staying steadfast and not changing his thought process, not changing his assumption that he was in New York, everybody else needed to rearrange their minds to accommodate him. His commanding officer that had once denied him Through the act of Neville saying that he was in New York, imagining that he was in New York, his mind began to shift, because originally his commanding officer's mind was focused on the fact that he needed to be in the military. He wanted to go to war with this kind of man. But through the act of doing this, and one of the things that he mentioned inside of the original meeting that they had together was that, hey, I'm not sorry for myself, but I am sorry for your daughter and your family, because you have to be here with us. But I am happy for myself, essentially saying that he was happy for himself that he would want to go to war with a man like Neville Goddard. But through those days where Neville persisted in the assumption, the rearrangement of the mind of his commanding officers and all the other men were the things that ultimately led that commanding officer to call Neville Goddard back into his office and to finally say, you know what, I will discharge this man. Because he had to move into the position where he supported the assumption of Neville. When a mind is made up, when a person's mind is made up, every other person around you must set themselves to that assumption. If you assume yourself to be an attractive person, and you think that, and you imagine yourself, and you imagine how people react to you being attractive, if you do that for long enough, people will have to move into the assumption that you are an attractive person, because your actions will be reflecting that. The way you speak, the way you move will be a reflection of that. And ultimately, other people will have to respond in like kind. And you will find people that are attracted to you. You'll find people that weren't attracted to you before now attracted to you, because you have a new energy, you have a new self-concept, a new energy within your nervous system and mind that makes people act in accordance with that. Because every person is paying attention to very subtle signals from every other person in their experience, and we are constantly in the process of making decisions of how we're going to act with another person. Like, for instance, if you met somebody like the president, the moment that you meet the president and you realize that this person's the president, you're going to change your demeanor. You're going to change how you act around this person. If you end up talking to somebody regular, a random stranger on the street, and somebody comes up and they start talking to this person and wanting to take a picture with them, and then you realize that this person is a celebrity and you remember them from a movie, you're going to change the way that you act towards this person because of the assumption and the work that this person has done over time. And the way that you've seen the person and the context in which you've seen this person has changed. So if you make a decision that you want to be attractive, that you want to be a millionaire and a business owner, if you do that and you stay in that assumption long enough, other people will begin to treat you like that. If you believe yourself to be a business owner, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have people who want to do business with you, because they recognize who you are and they will act in accordance with who you are. Just like if you met a president, just like if you met a celebrity. So whatever you want, whatever you desire, understand that when you do any act like Neville Goddard's state akin to sleep, what you are doing is you're beginning to assume a new identity. You're rearranging your mind. And through the act of rearranging your mind, all other minds must rearrange to support your assumption. If you guys want a little bit more help on how to figure out your own assumptions and how to get your life the way that you want, whether it's your relationships or your money, check out that video right here.